Good morning, and yes, I am looking at you from a very weird angle, and that is because I still haven't had a chance to properly set up my new rig, I guess you would say. And so my phone is kind of down there, the computer's up there, the stories are over there. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, but you know, better better this than nothing.
It's all about the subject, Richard, isn't it?
Now, you poor buggers are both sick. Is that the case?
Oh, man, I'm sponsored today by Curol's and Gatorade. They're my standbys for the show, and I'm not even kidding. I think a lot of the trade, I've talked to a lot of different people in the last couple of weeks that have been saying, oh man, this winter bug's really got me. And I think it actually is a thing. So I probably caught it off the internet from you, Richard. It's doing the rounds and it's not good. And there's quite a few within the industry that I think are afflicted at the moment.
Yes, I've had it. It wasn't lovely.
No, I went to Auckland last week and came home.
Well, it's all our fault.
And the day after I came home, I got sick.
Auckland thing, right?
Blame Auckland.
No, to be fair, my wife had something for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I was gloating that I'd managed to avoid it. Foolish man.
Yes, that was your undoing, wasn't it? Well, I hope everyone else out there watching the show and those in the industry are not suffering from the same degree we are, but it's going to be the AutoTalk cough splutter live discussion today, I think.
Yes, it pretty much is. 2 seconds here now. I'm just kind of sorting out everything for us so we can go. I'm just having a bad tech day. I really am.
Yeah,
I really am.
Well, while you're doing that, I can just make a quick comment and say I don't know how everyone's week's been going in the industry out there if you're in retail land, but certainly been a bit of a funny old month. You know what I was thinking? We had a fair July, I think would be the best way of putting it, a fair July. And then the first week or so of Auckland was like, August was trucking away. And then it seems to have died back off again. And the same old question, where do all the people go? What do they all do? Where do they all hibernate to? But we've had some beautiful weather. It's been glorious winter days up here in Auckland. You know, those gorgeous deep blue sky mornings. But the people haven't been coming out at the rate that I thought they would have. So once again, it's a very difficult market right now to predict what's going to happen. And I'm sure all of you in the business, particularly your CFOs, have to sort of work through planning what's going to happen next week, next month, next year. Can't predict it at the moment. I was talking to a couple of dealer friends of mine down the South Island saying much the same sort of thing, maybe a little bit better. But again, the same thing, the head count, the number of people making inquiries appears to be down. Where are they? Where have they gone?
Yeah, I was speaking to a rep for a company this week. He says, still trying to sort this bloody camera. There you go. I'll bring my daughter's little panda in as a camera stand. Yeah, it died for some reason. Anyway, that's better. Yeah. I was speaking to a rep from a major supplier brand this week. They were saying, Auckland's still pretty bad. They're seeing life in the regions. The regions seem to be doing slightly better. Of course, that's potentially flowing from, there's still dairy money flowing into the market. And perhaps the interest rate cuts maybe when your mortgage isn't as quite as crippling as Aucklanders are, then maybe they are a little more meaningful or open the door a little more. But yeah, it's still not wonderful out there. Stay alive till 2029. The question is, what do you do about it? This country is slipping deeper and deeper into recession every month. I don't care what they say about, there being some elements of stuff out there, but it's just getting nasty. Restaurant after restaurant going under. I'm hearing dealership liquidations are starting to really bite. Yeah, I haven't seen it like this in a very long time, and I now think it's worse than the credit crunch.
Oh, it's been worse than a credit crunch for some time. But conversely, I surf Trade Me quite often. And I've started to see some vehicles that have been sitting around for a while moving. And so I'm seeing a little bit more flow through the Trade Me adverts, particularly for the dealer ones. So So there is some movement, but it's got a long way to go. But this hard economic times, the causes of it and the other factors from it run deeper than the GFC. The GFC was just basically a banking issue that caught everybody up. This is far wider than the banking issue, and I think it's deeper than what we had in COVID. But we've never really recovered very much from COVID times, and people's reserves are running out. That's why we're starting to see restaurants that have been going for 30 years falling over.
Yeah, and I'm just not sure. I mean, A, what the government can do about it, but B, if the government's that interested in doing anything about it, I don't see a huge amount of panic or excitement or concern from the government. And I know that, you can talk all you want about how they're going to deal with the overspending of the previous government, but someone's got to drive this bus. And it's not always a case of just letting the thing right itself, unfortunately. Austerity is proven never to work. Go and look at what happened in the UK in regards to that kind of stuff.
But neither has the government spending lots of money worked either. I mean, there has to be a balance somewhere there.
Why are we here?
Well, they've made a number of announcements around infrastructure, but infrastructure alone is not going to drive the economy out of recession. It's the prices for our goods. Butter at over $10 for 500 grams. I mean,
it's not just that. It's the stuff that you think is minor that is smart initially, but then you realize later it's pretty dumb in the context of certainly what we're looking at, right? So the government has made tax concessions too, and look, you can call me a commie all you want, Graham. The government earlier on in the term made tax concessions to higher income New Zealanders, and that's fine. But at the same time, they rug pulled $100 million in working for families from the market, from the economy, right? So $100 million working for families, that's probably, I don't know, 500,000 families in New Zealand that had a meaningful change, the amount of money coming in to their house every month. That changes their spending habits. I have a funny feeling that may change for many of them how many cars they buy. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily think that the tax cut for higher income New Zealanders is going to increase the number of cars they buy. So it's stuff like that really does affect the economy, little bits here and there. And I think the government was very rushed to try and cut, but maybe it's not always the right thing to do. And there you go. I'm a dirty commie, Graham.
Well, you're still my friend, even if you are, Richard. It's okay. I was going to say, look, I've got a few political friends. We all do within this group. I'm sure I've got a few political friends operating down in Wellington right now, and I can pretty much assure you the government is critically aware of what's going on. The issue is, I wouldn't, I would not want to be in Parliament right now for all the tea in China. I really wouldn't, because it's a question of what lever do you pull? Because it seems at the moment, no matter what they do, and I'm talking about government across the parties, whatever you do is going to be the wrong thing. It's a real jam politically to be in, because you're bearing the brunt now of successive issues that it doesn't really matter what you do. You either do something and it's wrong, or you don't do anything and it's wrong. But whatever we're doing right now, it's going to end up with much the same result.
I'm going to go back to a discussion we had months ago about optics, right? We discussed a while ago, and I think I got some tacit nods of approval from you guys, and the government should slow down the fact that they were almost bragging about public service cuts in Wellington. Well, they just this week bragged again about cutting more public service jobs. I'm like, how does that help anyone? Wellington's fucked already in some sectors. It's sorry. I'm not saying don't cut them. I'm just not saying don't brag about it. So.
Well, yeah, but I think we've all got short memories. And if we go back, because I'm going to take the converse view to you, Richard. If we go back, the left-leaning parties, when they're in power, tend to spend, and they tend to overspend, and they tend to also be quite, what some would say, soft on the handing out money. And to a certain extent they are. And then when you get a right-leaning government, they tend to be hard on the people, and so they cut back the benefits. in somewhere the pendulum's got to swing. But if I just go back to the Helen Clark era of government, when we actually had quite strong growth, and they spent money unwisely, and I can give you lots of examples about that.
Yeah.
And then we came into GFC, and because they hadn't paid down debt, we then had a change of government. And look, it took Bill English 2 terms to get that under control, 2 full terms, and a certain amount of austerity worked. And they had layoffs in the public sector then. They just didn't shout about it, but it was quite tough. And then
it's the message, just the confidence, not necessarily the layoff. That's the problem.
Yeah, but then we look at the Labour Greens and then Labour. The public service grew, and it grew exponentially, and that's never a good sign because there's not a lot of productivity that was gained with that. So it had to be brought under control. We can just argue about whether it's been brought under control the right way. But you know what's screwed Wellington? It's not so much that the public service being cut back, although a lot of public servants are going to disagree with me on that. It was suddenly the cutting off the consultants and the amount of consultancy that was being done. And that's what's really knocked Wellington. But that's just a symbol. That's just a symptom, of a wider cause throughout the country. And they say when farmers do well, New Zealand does well. Well, it might be. It might be the case. I think a lot of people are starting to not believe that. But if it does, again, it's going to take time to trickle through. And I think that's why we're starting to see the regions do a little bit better in the car sales, is that the farmers are starting to do. So high milk prices, high butter prices, etc., is going to start to filter through. But it's a long road. And that's the thing, is that we're not getting out of this easy. At all.
I'm not saying I want the government to rush back to a spending spree like the last one did. And it used to get pretty frustrating where you'd have a cough, someone would complain about something was being too expensive or something was doing whatever. And within 3 days, Jacinda or whoever was standing up there throwing out some subsidy or some plan to fix it quickly without much thought. But I'm not sure there's a lot of a plan going on at the moment either. Now, I don't know if that's because they needed one, or that they've been caught out by how bad this is. But I agree. The market needed to right itself. But if you right the market for so long that you start destroying solid businesses, which is what's happening, then you've pushed it too far. And I don't think anyone wants to see that, especially now we're starting to see it really affecting the property market. And I'd love to see the property market correct a little bit as well, but some of the stuff we're hearing out of the property market now is getting pretty scary. So, yeah. Anyway.
But of course, everybody wants the property market to crash because they want to buy a house. The minute they buy a house, nobody wants the property market to crash.
Yeah.
Well,
that's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
Well, my son bought a house December, January. And its value has gone down. But the thing that has also helped is that his interest rates have gone down.
Yes.
So at the moment, the property market is sort of holding its own while the interest rates are going down. But if the property values are going down and interest rates are going up, that would be a very different set of issues.
Mm-hmm. The question is whether the government can rely just on interest rates to get the economy moving again. That's the big question, because that can cause, if you get that wrong, that can be problematic in its own right.
Well, yes, but they are using interest rates to control inflation, and they're hoping that lower inflation will then mean that the market grows. It is a blunt tool, and there's lots of discussion internationally as to whether relying solely or predominantly is, I think, the correct word, on using interest rates to control inflation is the right way to go about it.
Yeah. The other aspect too with the property prices coming down, of course, is that the government removed some of the first home buyer assistance since they come into power, but they've also removed the bright line test and a few other things. So are all those cheaper houses going to buyers? They're going back into the investment pool. So it's a tricky. I wouldn't want to be a finance minister or the head of the Reserve Bank, because it's a mind fuck. You move one thing, it affects the other thing. You affect one thing, it goes the other way.
But that's not what the stats are telling us at the moment. I don't think they are. I don't think a lot of them are going back into the rental market. Some are, but we're also seeing a much higher proportion of first home buyers in the market at the moment, and that is a good thing. So, yeah.
Anyway, do something, government. We need to sell more cars. What's one thing you want the government to do to boost the economy or boost cars? Graham, go.
To sell more cars? Gosh, I don't know. Honestly, Richard, I said to you before, I don't know what the answer is. Sentiment.
Dump the CCS or
relies upon sentiment. No, I think the CCS changes they've announced are probably going to have some meaningful change to things. I would like to see cross-party consensus on the pathway forward for our vehicle fleet. I'm sick of the intervention and the meddling every 3 years like this. The industry is sick and tired of it. Let's just have a proper pathway moving forward. We may not all agree on it, and there's a lot of different aspects around that, but the industry seems to be bedeviled by the political wishes of different party mantras over the years that result in it being like a little jagged line like this. You never quite know where to gamble. Maybe that's part of the plan, keep the industry on its toes. I'd just like to see consensus on a longer plane forward.
Yeah. And David?
I think certainty, government certainty around issues is another way of saying what Graham is saying. We've seen the effects of government interventions and how they can play with the market. I mean, the highest month ever for sale of new vehicles was on a border point, month to month, of a CCS and CCD change. And so agreeing the long-term path and then not tinkering too much with a clean car standard, I think would help. That's what industry most wants. And I mean, I've worked for 2 different trade associations during my career. And it doesn't matter which one it was. Both wanted the government to provide a degree of certainty and to not play with the market in a way that increased what we call sovereign risk. In other words, we wanted sovereign risk taken out of it. That gives the market an ability to know what to expect. It's when the government starts changing the rules too much, too fast, or too many times, then we start to get a problem, and then we start to get sovereign risk, because the investors, and particularly international investors, look at the New Zealand market and say, oh, we're not sure what the government's doing here, we might not get our return, and they pull out and go elsewhere. And New Zealand needs both international and domestic investment for the economy to grow.
Yep.
I think they need to come up with some form of relief for small businesses. I don't know what that is, whether it's like a very short-term GST rebate or something like that, and they need to probably dial back a degree some of the cuts they made around that middle income New Zealand, that working for families, the childcare subsidies, all that kind of stuff. That just needs to be dialed back a little bit, because those are the people for whom $150 income difference a month could be the difference whether they buy upgrade their car or not. That's it's half a finance payment on a basic new car, it's not even half of a finance payment, but it's a part of a finance payment on a cheap new car or a reasonable used car.
Richard,
exactly, either or. But it's amazing how much an extra $100 a month in middle income New Zealand's pocket would make to the car market and the broader retail market. Just brings a little bit of that confidence back. That's my take. But anyway, cool. Right, let's move on to some news.
Fix the economy.
Yes, well,
you're listening, Christopher, we fixed it for you.
Right, let's move on to some news. And the first one, Bishop confirms clean vehicle standard changes to allow credit swaps. Yeah, it's not CCS, it's CVS according to them these days. The government is making change to the clean vehicle standard to give importers greater flexibility in how they meet annual emissions targets. The move, Transport Minister Chris Bishop says, will help keep car costs down for consumers. One change will allow credits to be transferred between used vehicle importers and new vehicle importers to reflect the greater fuel saving potential of new vehicles over their lifetime. Importers will need 2 credits earned on used vehicles to offset a charge on a new vehicle. The lifespan of the credits will also be extended from 3 years to 4, and importers will be able to offset charges from 1 year by supplying and selling more low emissions vehicles the following year if conditions improve. The government supports the clean vehicle standard to ensure that New Zealand has an affordable mix of clean vehicles, Bishop says. They have also removed the they also know a CO2 target to be set without adjusting vehicles for vehicle weight. The relationship between vehicle weight emissions is breaking down. It used to be that heavier cars would often have higher emissions, but as more hybrids and EVs have entered the market, this is no longer the default assumption. A weight-based approach was only designed to be temporary.
The RAV4 hybrid paradox.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, there's going to be relief certainly for some of the new vehicle distributors. Suzuki is probably the biggest winner in regards to that, with the removal of the weight adjustment, because they were certainly headed towards a bit of a grim period that was going to hit them pretty hard. Obviously, this is going to be a boon for those clean car importers those small used car importers who lean on the cleaner side of the market. Do you think, Graham, we're going to end up with a whole pile more really cheap Nissan Leafs coming into the market? I mean, you can buy some pretty cheap fresh import Leafs at the moment.
No, I think we're actually already at peak Leaf capacity anyway. Boom, boom.
I'm not saying we can tolerate it. I'm not saying we can actually tolerate any more.
Well, I'm going to say, and that's part of the issue at its heart. I mean, every importer is still a businessman or business person, I should say. And you can import whatever you want, but at the end of the day, someone's got to actually sell or get rid of the product you've used to bring the thing in. And I think Leafs right now are about to slide below that critical mass line where you actually can't sell a Leaf for the price to justify the credit that you were trying to harvest.
What are the credits worth on the? What are the credits worth on a Leaf?
Close to $3,000.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So it's not inconsequential, but if you've got to pay the money to get the Leaf here in the first place against a market that's probably already to an extent saturated and moving forward, what have you really gained? Have you come down to the fact that you could either choose to import something else at the same sort of margin or better margin and sell it quicker, or are you better to have the vehicle and bring it, hope that you sell it at cost to harvest your credit? Because at the end of the day, credit's worth $27. Whichever way you do it, in the used sector, it's worth $27, right? And so it doesn't matter what you do, you've got a capped value at the end as to what that vehicle gained you in credits versus what you could have done if you just swiped the credit card on your NZTA Clean Vehicle Standard website. And if you slide below that cost line to get rid of the asset that you brought in to gain the credit, you're eroding the value of that $27 credit to start with. So I think, I don't think we'll see an increase in that. The move out to 4 years, I think, was good. And industry had been calling for that because we know that these changes that are coming through, they're incremental. 1 more year, I think, gives it a little bit more breathing space. I did note there'd been some chatter around the various groups about the possibility of changing the value, the $27 value, and I've seen nothing to suggest that's the case. I think that was just a bit of a red herring, and possibly if you're looking to buy credits, that might have been a good one to put out there. But I see no change in that, and I don't see a need to change that value either. That would upset the market to an extent that it doesn't need to be upset.
Yeah, David, your take?
When I first read this, I thought the question I asked myself: swapping credits between new and used, is that going to change things much? And I think that I don't see whether that's going to. I don't see how that's going to play a big part. I think the biggest changes or biggest impact from the changes are two factors that both the new and used vehicle talked about ad nauseum to Julianne Genter back in the day, and then to Michael Wood, and that was about the weight adjustment. We just said to them, you're going to have to deal with that, because the more we move to low emission technology vehicles, the heavier those vehicles are going to become. And if you leave that weight adjustment in there, then the first thing you're going to see is you're going to see small cars disappear out of the market. And that's going to be seen to be perverse by people who can't understand why you've got your Ford Everest and the Hilux and those bigger vehicles floating around, and you're losing these small cars because they're penalised. So taking that weight adjustment out, I think, is a good move. And it probably should have been done a year or two earlier than what it has been done. And the other issue that was raised quite commonly was the period of times at which you could save the credit. And so rolling it out to 4 years, I think is makes sense. It makes more sense now, but I'm not sure I would like to see many more changes to the clean vehicle standard. I think they've probably got the settings about right now, and they just need to let it play out so that the business people, both new and used, can determine what is the best way that they can meet that. Because no matter which way we look at it, the clean vehicle standard is going to bite harder in 2026 than it has in 25, and it will bite harder again in 2027. For the new vehicle sector, 4 years provides a lot more planning because that fits more closely to their product renewal window timeframe.
Yes.
As opposed to the used vehicle sector, which has got a time frame of 3 to 6 months or a year if they're looking out. But normally, you're a spot buyer within that 3 to 6 months, aren't you, Graham?
8 weeks.
8 weeks. See, but a new vehicle market, they're doing their product planning right out to 4 years. Actually, they do it on a 5-year window, but that 3 to 4 years is the critical point for them.
Yeah. And if they're getting in trouble at the end of that 4-year period, they can actually have the last year to severely shift their model range if they have to rebalance a little bit.
Well,
a dealer colleague of mine a while ago. Oh, sorry, Karen, David.
I was just going to say it gives them a better ability to negotiate with their OEM head office around how they manage their product transition timelines.
Yeah.
A colleague of mine suggested that, and this is before the scheme really hit its stride a couple of years ago, that we'd see the likes of Ford running up to Japan and buying a whole lot of cheap Aquas and bringing them in to offset. This is before it was known that at that stage we wouldn't be able to interchange between new and used. Bringing a whole lot of Aquas in and selling them off at cost to gain the credits to sell their Rangers. And apart from the likes of Toyota, that arguably have the best mechanism already in place for dealing with both a new and a used marketplace, I can't see there being much material difference that's going to happen with a new vehicle distributor being able to offset to used, because the industry in the used sector has the same problem that the new industry would face if it had a dabble in, and that is we can't access the stock. So the glory days of having whatever you wanted to choose in Japan at your fingertips and you just had to work your way through the specs that you wanted, they're long gone. One of the issues we're seeing with reduced numbers is not just a lack of demand, but it's also the lack of available stock in Japan at a price that you can actually make work. And it's a reality the whole industry faces. So if New wishes to have a play in that particular sector, given that Japan really is our only realistic source market for used and volume, there's a tough time coming. So I don't see it making any material difference.
No.
And morning, Ra. I know you're watching. My friend from Christchurch is watching. Morning, Ra, my man with the Supra. He's always here.
So, Graham, that is correct. But, and here is the but, because I recall these discussions back in the day. In Japan, the OEM down to dealer is much more vertically integrated. And if there was trading between new and used right back in the day, then I think you would have seen the likes of Suzuki and some of the other brands, in addition to Toyota, grabbing the stock through the parent ownership, so it didn't come into the auction market. So the auction market would have been starved more quickly.
A lot of them were for a while. You remember back in the days when we basically looked at who was involved either directly or indirectly in used imports. You had Toyota, you had BMW, Honda, Mazda for a while. Well, Mazda and a couple were basically through the cycling carriage kind of complex. I think were doing it through their dealer ownership. Colonial were doing it. It was all over the place. Look, I don't think anyone was ever going to go and run up to Japan and buy used cars. No, they were certainly, and Ford's a prime one, bringing in cars purely for the credit. You know, there's an awful lot of fleets out there driving around in some heavily discounted Mustang Mach-E's and Ford Escape hybrids that were smartly placed by Ford to balance out their range of stuff. But what I do think will happen, and I would encourage caution from some of our used import friends out there, is that the new car industry is very good at playing a longer term game. And we've seen, Graham, at times in the various dealer opportunities and the carbon trading markets, some cheap as heck credits going. And I wouldn't be surprised if certain smart car companies would start monitoring that and picking up cheap used import credits when they pop up and banking them because it's sort of cheaper than paying the NZTA. And certainly there'll be an element of used importers who need to yield that cash, whereas there are distributors that can spend that cash and sit on it. In the same way, I suspect some of the bigger importers have actually done that as well. I believe there's one of the exchanges does work in close proximity with one of the wholesale groups. There could be some very tactical buying out of the market in the near future and over the next year or two. And I would certainly be careful about flogging off credits too cheaply.
Honestly, if there's been cheap credits in the marketplace for a little while, Richard, I haven't seen them. And I do monitor.
No, they haven't for a while, but we did see the point where they were trading occasionally down as low as, I think I saw one lot go for like $9 at one point. Now, that's not going to happen anytime soon. We got to the point where they were pretty much selling at face value.
Yeah.
So I think as Japan moves into hybrid technology and plug-in hybrid technology in the future, this removing the barrier in New Zealand trading between new and used plays more strongly into the new vehicle market sector than it does into the used, because of the ability for the Japanese OEMs to grab the stock before it gets to the auction house. So that creates an issue longer term for the used car sector, because they don't see the stock coming to the auction houses to buy if the new vehicle sector starts to bring them in. Immediately it does help Toyota, but in a way, some of the OEMs, if they were bringing it in, they didn't. While it was easier to have a swap minted between new and used, it didn't matter at the end of the day too much if they could actually get the cash, because it was the financial hit on their books that they were then using to the way in which they recalibrated the pricing. And I recall having a discussion with a journalist who was an economist, who said, of course, they would use the credits to offset the electric vehicles and not to reprice across their model range. Well, no, that's not necessarily the case, because that's not how business people think. Business people do the math and they think, which is going to give me the greatest overall lowest cost and therefore a better profit margin. And it may be to spread the cost out across all of them, or it may be to offset there. It depends also what the competitor's doing. So the changes that are being made to this clean vehicle standard now, I think, Graham, probably play more strongly into the new vehicle market. But it will help the used vehicle sector as well. Yeah.
And the used vehicle sector has been facing this for quite some time now, that ultimately the issue our sector faces is none of the things we're talking about. It's the supply, the physical supply of vehicles out of Japan, the lack of supply. New Zealand slipped down to 7th or 8th now in terms of its ranking. And that's before you even start getting into the resurgence of the used vehicle market in Japan. And so we talk about the OEMs withholding stock and sending it to New Zealand instead. I mean, at the end of the day, you're right, we're all business people. The business people themselves and the likes of Toyota must be also recognizing that the value of product in Japan now at a used level is very different to what it was 3, 4, 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, or right back to the glory days when we were first doing it 20 years ago. That there simply isn't the financial benefit, even given the credit value in New Zealand, to withhold that stock from an active market in Japan, because that's the issue we're facing at the end of it, is accessing the stock in Japan. It just isn't there at the quality and the pricing level that makes it work for New Zealand, nowhere near what it used to be. And so from Toyota, for example, from their perspective, so Toyota Auto Auction Network in Japan, why would it cannibalize such an active market, an active both domestic and international marketplace, for the sake of satisfying one of its smaller branches down at the bottom of the world? The incentive would need to be significant from a corporate benefit point to make that justifiable.
Yes, so I don't see the opportunity for these brands isn't necessarily shifting into the used market. I see it more being opportunistic purchasing on the credit market. But it's a different opinion on that one. Yeah. The interesting thing about this is I kind of feel like the new car industry, right, look, they'll never stop pushing, but this is the level they may have to accept. And I think a lot of that comes from, and it goes back to a note that Warren Walmart made back when when this was going through the earlier stage, they were going through the first stage of clean car standards. He said the problem isn't that the market, and he's there's obviously he's playing an angle. He was playing an angle here. The issue wasn't that the cars to meet the standard don't exist. It's just that the existing distributors didn't necessarily have them, and that China can supply as many of the cars to meet this as the market wants. And the argument goes, well, no, those cars aren't always right. Not everyone wants to buy those cars, and that's fine. But that was then, and now the availability of these cars has just gone nuts, and you can buy all sorts of very long-range plug-in hybrid vehicles for some devastatingly cheap prices out there in the market. Electric vehicles are cheaper. When I bought my first MG they retailed at over $50,000. Well, the brand new ones launched with 1 million times the technology, build quality, and range, and it's $43,000 or something brand new. That's not even discounted. That's just the list price. And the interesting thing about that will be going to Wellington and arguing that none of these vehicles exist, or that these vehicles are too hard to get, or whatever. And you may have noticed this, David. The latest all of government contract, that all of government contract for government fleet vehicles is stacked with those cheap Chinese long range plug-in hybrids or brands that take them. Chery, Amoda, BYD, they're all in there. And so the government on one hand, he says, we can buy all the stuff at the CO2 level for our fleet.
Yeah. Look,
not everyone wants to buy that stuff. There's good reasons why people wouldn't. I'm not saying that everyone has to go do that, but it's hard to justify when that element is growing in the market.
Well, here's the thing. I will confess, and I'm going to say, Warren, you were right, and I doubted it. But Warren and I had a fairly robust discussion, I think, in my last 6 months.
Can't imagine that.
Before I retired. Well, one of several, actually. But he because we'd had a very interesting council meeting, and he made some comments much along the lines that you said, Richard. I
was reiterating his comment.
Yeah. So afterwards, he rang me, and I sort of, I guess I became a devil's advocate, and I sort of bit the bait and said to him, well, people don't want to buy them because they're worried about the quality. And he said, look, David, in 3 or 4 years' time, the Chinese will be here en masse with vehicle technology that will just completely shift the market. And I have to say, he's not far wrong, because not only has the technology improved, but their manufacturing standard capability and quality, that last bit, quality, is starting to improve. Sure, there are some niggly things still, but now they're starting to do the testing. So with the purchase of the Yin Yang site in Australia, they are now starting, they are running their playbook from the standard international OEM technology. They are starting to develop vehicles and test them that are particular to the export market, and good on them, because we need good quality or reasonable quality, value for price vehicles, and the Chinese are going to bring them. So Warren was right in that respect.
Yeah. Now, the good thing is that all this tech is finally starting to trickle through from the traditional brands that we work with, and we're seeing some really good signs out there. Some of the stuff that Ford's playing with in America is amazing. If Ford can't bring that new electric pickup truck that is being pitched in the US to New Zealand, then I would say they should just pack up and go, because that kind of vehicle will be the future. It's true. And hopefully we'll see more of that stuff trickle down here. Now, some of it will be car companies partnering with China. We haven't discussed it yet, but we've got Northeast coming, who's launched in New Zealand. The Giltrap Group have gone big with all the Geely brands, other than the Smart, under one roof. And Volvo, they've released the next new Volvo in globally this week in China, and it's a XC70 with a 1.5 litre petrol engine and a range extender that can do, what's essentially a range extender plug-in hybrid that can do 1,500 kilometres. So legacy brands are going to come through with this stuff. I have little doubt that BMW, Ford, Toyota, they'll all work through this stuff. We're already seeing signs that Well, it's going to start doing these long-range plug-in hybrids either on their own or in partnership with BYD. It's all coming. It's all coming through. The Chinese just got a slightly early head of steam on them. It'd be interesting to see. But I thought that all of government catalog this year was incredibly telling as to the brands that were in there and what they sell.
But also that all the government, they did it because they needed to be able to get access to the cheaper vehicles for budget reasons as well. So that there was a number of outcomes, but it was telling. I think, Richard, the thing that I'm impressed with, because for a long time I could not understand why plug-in hybrid electric vehicles were playing second fiddle to full electric vehicles and to hybrid vehicles, non-plug-in. And they were playing second fiddle. And I think it was because they had these dual technologies, but they had this pitiful range on full electric. So the moment that we're now starting to move to these super hybrids, there are two things that is good about the technology. One is the range that you can go on full electric is now meaningful. So the moment you go above 100 kilometers on a charge, you're starting to get a meaningful capability of running zero emissions for a long time until you go on a trip. And the fact that you can get 1,200 plus kilometers out of a 65 litre tank is really, really impressive. And
it's painful,
oh no, it is painful. But if you bring that,
what's for this guy here?
But if you bring that technology into the utes who worry about towing under load, then that is the answer, because the electric, along with the petrol, can provide you the power and the torque, and give you a decent enough range. So that's the technology I think that's going to make the difference.
But should be noted, we do have a somewhat real electric ute in the market now, the Radara. 3 tons of towing, 130 kg payload, somewhat restricted on range.
Yeah, it's still the range on towing that is the issue. It's not the issue for the tradie who's only doing short, but the longer runs.
Not every vehicle has to be perfect for everyone.
No, I understand that, but the range is what worries some people. So, but we're also starting to see the Japanese brands going. I mean, Subaru has been making noises about super hybrids, and and that technology will then come through into the used car sector and going forward. And so we've seen Mazda starting to play around with it. Honda's got really interesting electric vehicle technology. So what I'm waiting to see is what Toyota's doing.
Yeah, Honda's actually partnered with a couple of Chinese brands for their electric vehicle technology now, and the stuff they've got through is great. If you're looking for, how do I put this, an electric vehicle for your fleet or your mother-in-law, and I say this in the most positive way, go check out the Honda EN1. It's the electric car that isn't an electric car in a very good way. It's just an electric Honda. The fact that you don't put petrol in it is the key. There's nothing different about that car than a normal petrol Honda, and that is, I think, for a chunk of the market.
I read your review, Richard, and I thought that's exactly the takeaway that I got from it too. It's a vehicle, a competent mid-size SUV that also happens to be an EV, but
it's one of those cars where I get a lot of flash cars in the driveway and a lot of unflashed cars in the driveway, but I'll tend to stick the time in the car that's just easy to get in and out of, easy to turn on and start, easy to use the nav, easy to do all the stuff. The bleeps and bells don't annoy me too much, and it's comfortable. And that was one of those cars that I just gravitated back. Weirdly, the other car recently that I did that, and sorry to my EV friends, Ford Everest, totally the same thing. I had a Ford Everest and a Toyota Prado Adventure at vaguely the same time, one before each other. The Prado was far cooler than the Everest, and in some ways better. But the Everest is just Ford have dialed in with Ranger and Everest how easy they are to use and simple and just comfortable. I just gravitated to it. Anyway, my take on it. Same reason I gravitate to any Transit Custom when it's in my driveway. Right. The Ford Transit Custom is, in my opinion, the best all-round developed vehicle in the market anywhere. So much thought has been put into how those vehicles are to use. It's because they're designed for guys who jump in and out of it 70 times a day in Europe, and anyway, that's my weird vehicle rant on. Done. Now, we will move on from that into other stories. Just note there is a response from VIA to the changes on our website at the moment at autotalk.co.nz. We are still waiting on a response from the MIA. They have had questions for a few days now. I got a call from their team just before this, and we'll have that out hopefully maybe today, if not Monday or Tuesday. But yeah. Now, this one I disappeared off, which is the reason was it last week? Yeah. I've just been off to Australia briefly at the invitation of Tesla to go over and try out their full self-driving. Supervised.
This is embargoed until this morning, wasn't it?
It was embargoed until this morning. So I was up at 2 a.m. this morning putting stuff online because I didn't trust our scheduling system. So we've got stories across New Zealand Autocar, AutoTalk, EVs and Beyond, all different, and then videos on Autocar and EVs and Beyond. So they are finally bringing a level of full self-driving to New Zealand, though not a full level. So this is the supervised version. So you're still going to be sitting there behind the wheel looking forward. If you look at your phone, the car tells you off. But by golly, is it impressive. Like, I never thought Tesla could do what they claimed without using LiDAR or ultrasonic sensors and that kind of stuff. I drove through Brisbane for 3 hours in mixed conditions, including some rain, traffic, idiot drivers, and I only had to intervene 3 times, and none of those were safety related. They were more just the car was taking a little bit too long to do something. Because it's cautious. So we won't go too far into this now, but go to the site, have a look at the story. It is super impressive, down to the point where we're driving through a park and a peacock ran out in front of the car about 3 car lengths ahead, and the car preemptively just slowed down a little bit for it. So super cool. It's $10,400 to add on to your Tesla, but they are looking at it doing a subscription. But I thought about it while I was there, and if I was living in Auckland and had a complicated commute, and I was a bit of a slow starter in the morning, I would pay that money. I think it's actually worthwhile. And you're still only taking the cost of, say, a entry-level Model Y up to 80 grand, which is, there's nothing else within 50,000 of that has close to that level of driver assist. So that was a real surprise, and I'll try and get you guys behind the wheel of it when it comes down to the country. At least take you for a drive. We should do a podcast in a Tesla Model Y while it's driving this around.
Here's an idea.
The interesting thing, Richard, that I was pleased to see is that they said that this is still level 2. I thought probably it was getting more closely to level 3, but they weren't claiming it was a level 4 or 5 autonomy capability.
Well, they can only really claim it's level 2 if they seriously want it to be legally accepted in New Zealand and Australia, certainly for Australia. The second you relieve the need for that person to be steering straight ahead, and I tell you what, they had advice to move our cameras closer to the center of the car, because if we looked at our camera too much, it would have shut down full self-drive.
But even under level 3, it still requires driver input. It's not till you get to level 4 and 5 that you can start having non-driver input consistently for extended periods of time. So I was glad to see that the marketing around it is much more realistic, and this stuff's coming along in great lengths. The other manufacturer that is doing this, but at a much higher price point, which you make, is the price point's important, is Mercedes, who have some of their autonomy are starting to do it without LiDAR as well. So your camera-based is the ability for a camera-based system to be able to read around you and interpret it. The AI is just so much better, and we will continue to see big leaps and bounds in the way in which these vehicles drive.
I do think we will get better results from some companies going with LiDAR, but that comes with a cost penalty. So, yeah, interesting to see. But I learned on that, look, the camera system is very adaptable. Things like picking up that bird. Even we got a hand signal from someone at Roadworks, and the guy was giving mixed hand signals, so we got a bit of a weird response. But even that, I think, was being taken into account. It was really impressive. I do encourage people to go and look at that.
Did it rain while you were driving?
It was raining when we left. It wasn't hard rain, and that's one area where I still question, because I was testing Navigate on Autopilot in New Zealand on a Tesla Model Y a few weeks ago, and that did start to kind of say maybe degraded when it went during heavy rain. So
Yeah, that's the issue with camera-based technology is when you get heavy rain and the road colours sort of merge in, it has difficulty picking up lanes and picking up the edge of road and things like that. So it becomes a little bit more cautious.
Yeah. Right, let's blast through some more stories because we're at 50 minutes. Vehicles down, but Ports of Auckland posts a record $85 million profit. Fewer vehicles moved through Auckland's port than the year to June 30, but strong container growth and improved efficiency helped deliver a record underlying net profit after tax of $85.4 million. Good result there for them, but obviously car numbers are down. They paid some money over to the council, always helpful. Eagers have posted a record half-year result. It's across New Zealand, Australia. Of course, Australia hasn't been that bad. Has been pretty solid in the last year. Eagers Automotive has reported net record revenue profits for the first time in 2025, underlining its position as one of Australia's biggest vehicle retail groups and highlighting its growing role in the new energy vehicle market. Now, what does that mean? Well, they've been part of up until a month or two ago, being part of the group distributing BYD in Australia, which has been a massive growing brand, and they still own a massive stake in the retail side of BYD in Australia. So they recorded revenue of $6.5 billion, up $18.9 million year on year, with underlying profit up to $197.7 million. Obviously, in New Zealand, they own a number of Ford and other franchise dealers and the Easy Auto 1, 2, 3 franchises. Morris Motor Group welcomes Hyundai and Isuzu Ute to the family. Family-owned Morrison Motor Group has recently purchased Mid-Canterbury Hyundai and Isuzu Ashburton, further expanding its franchise portfolio and presence in the region. The new addition brings with it not only new brands, but also the current team that has been serving Ashburton's community for years. We are thrilled to welcome both Hyundai and Isuzu to the Morrison family, says Director Mike Morrison. Interesting, those guys started out in the used vehicle space, if I'm correct there, Graham. They were reasonably substantial players in that area.
I think you're right, actually. I think you're correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So good to see that. Ibbott to open Geely, Farazon, and Zeekr concept store at the base. Now this comes off the announcement of Northeast, which, as we discussed earlier, that's a massive step for the Giltrap family, and really does, it covers their bases now. They've got a foot in both the European and performance and luxury camps, and in the Chinese and value, both luxury and value spaces. They signed Zeekr as part of that deal. And they're doing an interesting kind of 3-in-a-box concept with dealers. So basically at dealerships, by and large, you'll see Volvo, Zeekr, and Lotus together, which is the premium dealers in one building, which you'll see kind of the format there with the multiple signage. And Geely, Zeekr, Radara, and Farazon. So they're Chinese passenger car stuff, both value, commercial, and premium in the same box, which, as they said, we're very much going towards multi-franchising now, and it means that each dealer can have a little bit of everything. And it means that some of this premium stuff can go up to the regions and areas where it may not necessarily have gone. So good to see that. Geneva profit rises on strong insurance arms. So Geneva Fund Limited reported a sharp lift in annual profit from the year to 31 March. Its core lending operations remain under pressure. They actually lost. The lending losses continued, but they have made big gains through their Quest Insurance division, which had a pre-tax profit of $6.5 million, up 67% on the previous year. Came from premium growth and stable claims ratios. So that's a big one there. Colonial, another profit, $117.8 million profit, but warns of patchy markets. That is an understatement. Colonial Motor Company has reported a trading profit after tax of $17.83 million for the year ending June 30, 2025. A result Chair Ashwell described as better than expected, given the challenging conditions across the vehicle market. I guess, and you probably take here, Graham, they've got such a broad spread. They've got trucks, farmers, and Ford at their primary asset. They bought JAC on, of course, in the last year. But as long as one of those is doing pretty well, then they've got something to hang their head on, I guess. Yeah,
they've always been that. Colonial's always had a good suite of offering. So
yeah, and like the Giltraps, dipping their toe in that Chinese distributor market, which is good to see. We remain confident the ongoing commitment to the JSC brand is an important strategic investment in a Chinese-sourced product range. Thunder Ridge Motorsport Park gets council backing. Now, I would have thought we were pretty much done with getting motorsport circuits in New Zealand, that no more councils would ever sign off on something like this because NIMBYs, but apparently not. So the Western Bay and Plenty District Council has given its approval for a new motorsport facility at Tech Park, with Thunder Ridge Motorsport Park set to become the first purpose-built circuit in the region since the closure of Bay Park. The unanimous council decision was followed by the opening of a memorandum of understanding, clearing the way for lease negotiation, groundworks, and construction planning to begin. So a bit of a multi-use feature area there. Interesting looking track.
And I think also, Richard, built with FAI input. So there is some doubt about the tracks in New Zealand being able to do F1. If I read this rightly, then this might be capable of hosting an F1 race at some point in the future, which is kind of important.
I'm not sure. Could the Bay Area handle a F1 race?
Won't happen.
No, well, I mean, it's where it is interesting. I mean, it is out in the country, and they have a number of other facilities there. I was really pleased to see it come through. But the point is, you can't even be in the. You can't even step up to the batter's place if you haven't got a track that meets the standard. And that was the issue with the Taupo circuit, is they thought they had it up to the full standard. As it turned out, one corner didn't meet it, is my understanding. Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah. I didn't think there was anything higher than a potential class 3 in New Zealand. You need a class 1. But I may be wrong on that. I'd love it if someone from the motorsport fraternity told me what the real answer is to that one.
Yeah, I might be talking rubbish, but
because I've been to a class 2, and that is just a light years different level to anything we have in New Zealand. Like what Tony Quinn has put together in New Zealand is amazing, but I feel like they're more designed and targeted more at the lifestyle, tourism, gentleman racer kind of the side, rather than massive motorsport facility kind of thing. I believe they need to do quite a bit of work to Telpos to run the V8s, but look, I think it's cool to have more of that. And I know that Hampton Downs is pretty busy, as is Highlands Park. So essentially, commercial there. It's interesting. I was speaking a little while back to a PR company in Australia, PR person for a car company in Australia, who runs a lot of events over there. They've got a bit of a shortage of circuits in Australia. It's even harder to build them over there, though they have been building some new ones. But they're also busy that it's actually cheaper now, or cheaper was at that point, for customer events and to an extent media events, for them to fly people to New Zealand to book a track in New Zealand rather than do it in Australia. Track cost was better. The driving conditions on the actual road itself, the ability to enjoy the cars was better as well. So, interesting one. Man jailed for fraudulent WAFs. The NZ Transport Agency is welcoming sentencing of a man who fraudulently issued warrant offences without inspecting vehicles, calling it a serious breach of public trust. Dwayne Lord was sentenced in the Auckland District Court to 6 months imprisonment after being found guilty of multiple breaches of transport law between December 2022 and June 2023. Lord accessed the NZTA's vehicle inspection system using his employer's credentials, despite not being an authorised inspector. On 4 separate occasions, he issued 78 WAFs without checking most of the vehicles. I remember back in the day where everyone in the modified car scene knew of, and Graham, you'll know what I'm talking about, knew of some bloke, usually in a warehouse unit at the back of Henderson or Manukau, who could get you an easy WAF, bro.
When I got my warrant of fitnesses back in the good old days when I was 15, 16, local garage guy, he'd pull the car and he'd say, "The brakes work?" I'd say, "Yep." "Do your lights work?" "Yep." "Push your horn?" "Yep." "Righto, there's the book. You want the right? Just go and pump some gas. Just write your ticket out for me, would you?"
Right. Turner's tracking for record half-year profit. Turners Automotive Group says on track to deliver more than 10% earnings growth in the first half of financial year 2026. Despite a sluggish economy, low consumer confidence, restrictive interest rates, and rising unemployment, the company expects to post a net profit before tax of more than $29.5 million for the half year 2026, comfortably ahead of the $26.9 achieved in the same period last year. The automotive unit is outperforming last year. Tina from Turners, they reckon, has been pretty darn successful. Finance growth is up 5%. Insurance continues performing well. And, of course, they own a credit management company. And at the moment, that's a bit of a good resource to have, I imagine. Digital driving licenses get the go-ahead. We've all read this story by now, and I'm not going to talk about it too much. But what I will talk about from that story is people don't read stories. They read the social media posts. We ran this up on AutoTalk, and we had dozens of posts of people moaning about, rah, the government's just trying to track me. I don't want to have my phone number, blah, blah, blah. And yes, other people to go through and point out, have you read the story? They're not going to make you do it. It's an option. It's the same with the right. They're not going to make you do it. It's the option. I think they should make people do it, but it's an option.
It's been disappointing from a number of quasi-political angles about how this has been taken out of context, and like you said, just read it, for God's sake.
Who's taking it out of context, Graham?
I'm not going to go there, Richard.
I was amused. I was amused at comments on a motorcycle forum where people were basically losing their sanity over this, and I just pointed out to them, it's an option. You can have paper-based, or you can have digital, or you can have both. It's just an option. And they ignored me, so I repeated the post.
It's the mark of the beast. It's the second coming. It's the revelation.
I said to them, just spend a little bit of time doing some truth checking, fact checking before you post. So eventually they started to calm down. But you're right, Richard. I mean, this is people. I think it's a sensitivity to what they consider to be big government involved in their lives.
Yeah, exactly.
But they get all emotional before they even actually fact check, and unfortunately, social media just allows that to happen.
And one last story, and that if we're talking about cars that self-drive, this car has been all over the place in New Zealand for a while. People who have been talking to me in the industry lately say they've never seen this level of testing by a brand for a vehicle visibly in New Zealand. It's been crazy. This MG IM6, it's a brand that China shares with MG shares, or SCIC shares with a couple of tech companies up in China, is coming to New Zealand, and the self-driving in this car is apparently pretty ridiculous. There has been a couple of, or at least one, IM6s running around the North Island of New Zealand, maybe it's been the South Island now, for months, daily, thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers, with sensors and a master. But it's been popping up on social media constantly. Coming to New Zealand, and the pricing is pretty ridiculous. This is very much at the premium end of the market. Bigger batteries, bigger range, serious technology, 800-volt platform, capable of adding 300 kilometers of charge in 15 minutes, bi-directional rear wheel turning, intelligent driving functions developed by automotive tech firm Momenta that have been adapted to local conditions, including poorly marked roads and complex parking scenarios. Starts at 66,900, which you get a 217 kilowatt hour rear wheel drive model, and then you can go up to a 300 kilowatt platinum trim with 670 kilometers of NEDC range, so 550 realistically, or a 572 kilowatt, 802 newton meter monster with a 0 to 100 of 3.4 seconds. This is probably one of the most impressive cars I've seen to come out of China for a while. The pricing is Tesla beating, even though I think that entry level one's slightly more expensive than a Model 3. Overall, spec for spec, model for model, detail for detail, the pricing's crazy, and it's going to be interesting to see how it does in the market. Of course, it's going to be interesting to see how MG does, because they now have the very experienced hand as of this week of Dean Sheed running things.
Yes,
so interesting to see him turn up there. You were impressed with the MG4, so this is going to take things kind of to the next level, I think, Graham.
I'll be keen to try this. Hint, hint.
Yes. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. Sorry to rush through those other stories, but we just spent far too long on the first one, which is good. We love a good debate. And we will catch you. Will we?
Tell us you're in the
Will
country
we?
next week, Richard. Tell us you're in the
I'm
country
not.
next week.
I'm not in the country next week. Let me look at the timing. Let me
All
look
right.
at the timing. Yes.
We'll
Yes.
work that one out closer to the time.
I'm going to be up in Germany going to the IAM Motor Show, so let's just look at there. But let's see what we can do next week about going live. Anyway, thanks everyone. We'll catch you all later.